What's something that is socially accepted by society that you will never understand? The customer is always right mentality. First of all, that's not what that expression was supposed to mean. It means that you must cater to your customers' preferences by offering them what's in demand, or your business will not be in business. Unfortunately, we as society took that to mean that if you're a customer, that means you can act an idiot or a fool, be completely rude to others, and act like you have free reign in a place of business. No, you don't. But way too many poorly run businesses allow this mentality, and since it's allowed, people will do it. Thanks for the silver. It's also important to protect employees. My company puts a lot of time into finding good employees and training them well, and while we always expect them to be polite and respectful toward clients, they don't have to take abuse from an out of control client. That would be terrible for morale. As someone who works in retail customer service presently, I love proving people wrong when they read tags wrong and get super rude to my cashiers like it's not their fault you read a price wrong, or that you came at open 7 AM on the first day of the sale and your cheese puffs are still ringing up at $4 instead of $3.99. The U.S. foster system. I'm shocked at how few people acknowledge how terrible it really is. It's the social norm to just sweep it under the rug and pretend it's not there. I say all the time, I wish we could just bring back orphanages. Obviously, in an ideal world, every child would just be born into a loving home. I've worked with young children for 13 years and have literally only once seen a non-family foster placement that I thought was healthy and loving. These poor children just look broken. At least in orphanages, terrible people would take some pause knowing that their coworkers could rat them out if they witness abuse. In-home foster placements are completely unchecked. Same with institutions for developmentally disabled persons. The conditions in the institutions in the 50s and 60s were generally poor, but after deinstitutionalization we offload all the responsibility for caring for people with 24/7 lifetime needs, some of whom are violent, onto the family, which is not the answer. It's ruined lives and put many people into financial ruin. Drinking and driving. I recently went to an event about an hour from home with a bunch of friends. We all drove ourselves. I don't drink much and opted for water and pop all day. Everyone else was drinking beer and taking shots all day long. There were about 6 or 7 people taking turns buying rounds for everyone, so it's likely everyone had over a dozen drinks over a 10-hour period. Then everyone got into their cars to drive home. These were people well into adulthood, 30s and 40s, who are in middle class with good educations and professional fields of work. It blew my mind. It's certainly not socially acceptable, but that also doesn't mean people don't do it. It's pretty common in areas with poor or no public transit and that are spread out. For me to get home right now, it's a $35 Uber or Lyft, and that's without and surge pricing. And you and your friends likely don't live super close together. Drinkers call the road from the bigger town the gauntlet. When I was in a city, virtually no one I knew did it. Throwing a tantrum as a customer to get what you want. It's childish and wrong, but it sounds like you do understand it. It's a strategy for the customers to get what they want. It's frustrating because this is how people are actually rewarded most of the time. Their poor behavior is basically encouraged because companies don't want a bad reputation. So I do understand the concept, but I don't understand why companies reward these people when if they put their foot down, people would stop trying. I've discussed this with my son, a manager at Target, more along the lines of customers trying to return items that they've damaged or clothes they've worn. His policy is to do right by the customer. I've shared my view that if you reward bad behavior, people will behave badly. I think the difference is that he can be the nice guy at no cost to himself. The loss is to a faceless corporation. I suspect he would adopt a different policy if it were an owner-operated business. Psychological and financial abuse against children. Usually physical abuse is generally looked down on, but emotional abuse is barely a crime. It's really only talked about in extreme cases like the Gypsy Rose case when it gets made into a show. So I know that first word is a typo, but I did go searching to find out why autocorrect didn't pick that up for you. Phycology is the scientific study of algae apparently. Usually physical abuse is generally looked down. Physical abuse seems surprisingly acceptable in many countries. On Reddit I often see Americans talking about spanking children, as if it's somehow okay. I don't understand it. America seems like a civilized country in many ways, but somehow it's still legal to beat children. Reddit is confusing. I've seen posts with 10k plus upvotes saying hitting children is okay, but also posts with 10k upvotes saying taking away a child's phone or Xbox is abuse. That student loans are literally one of the only debts that cannot be declared in bankruptcy. In Canada, student loan debt is forbidden. After like 10 years, wages will still be garnished in the meanwhile. Kind of makes sense, since students right out of school are usually poor and have few assets, so it would be too easy to declare bankruptcy. If a large portion of new graduates could just declare bankruptcy, then no one would ever provide a student loan. Or that you need to take out tens of thousands in student loans to land a job making minimal money, like teachers. I really like this though, because they are nothing for them to repossess. When you declare bankruptcy, it's not like they are going to give you a lobotomy. I'm under the impression that this makes it easier to get said loans. Circumcision. In 100 plus years, future societies will judge us hard for that one. Parents never watch it being performed on their newborn. Says a lot. It's very strange how widespread it is in some places. To think it's fine to cut off a bit of someone's body for no good reason. If there was a medical issue, then no problem, but just as a routine thing. That's pretty weird. In 100 plus years, future societies will judge us hard for that one. Countries that don't practice it by default already do. It depends on the circumcision. I did it due to medical reasons and couldn't be happier. On the other hand, I find a bit weird parents doing that to babies. Let them grow up and decide if they want it or not. The extreme amounts of sleeping around that people do lately, it's like nobody either has a clue how medically risky it is or cares about other people anymore. And no, I'm neither a Christian nor a conservative. Misread this as the extreme amount of sleeping people do. Thought it was game over for me. Lol, until I read your comment I thought that too, and was so confused. You know there is a thing called protection. Doesn't protect from some types of HPV, and they break at times as well. Sleep tight. It does seem to be accepted and even encouraged. Just personally not my thing. Makes it hard to be one of the guys a lot of times. Celebrating drinking so much you forgot what you did. Yeah, this. And also the competition of who is able to consume more alcohol before getting wasted, and the pride that comes along with it is completely baffling to me. It's like celebrating who is the best of mowing their lawn with their own face. I'd be proud of myself if I could mow lawns with my face. Celebrating drinking or having drinking using other drugs be a highlight of your week life. In general, I just don't understand why those things are so important and so big part of people's lives. Of course, my own traumatic experiences with said substances and what they can do to people influences this confusion. Answering your phone wherever you are. Don't be rude. Let it go to voicemail. That's what it's for. Call them back. Somebody answered their phone during my daughter's graduation the other day. That or talking on speakerphone FaceTime in a publicly shared space. We don't all need to hear your conversation. Doing that and getting mad when people listen. Also, toilet cubicles are not private. It really bothers me when people are checking out at a store while talking on the phone, completely ignoring the cashier and being rude about it. As a cashier, I always feel so uncomfortable when people do this. Lol. Talking to disabled people like they are babies' children, no matter how old they are. This really bothered me when an older relative started having physical problems. Some people starting talking to him like he was a toddler. He just either didn't have the energy to tell them not to talk to him like that, or didn't care enough to pick that battle. Seems to be a thing with elderly people too, whether or not they might be bound to a wheelchair. People think, just because maybe you have to talk louder for them to hear, that it needs to be in simple, patronizing language. I'm 24 and in a wheelchair, and thankfully I don't get this much anymore. Not really a bad thing, but the degree to which people are interested in sport teams. Nothing wrong with liking a certain sport or a team player of the sport, but it's just a game. you'd actually think that they were getting paid to play. I'm talking more about the fans than the players. I think the amount of money and fame the players get is a bit ridiculous, but they entertain a lot of people, so it makes some sense. No, I'm agreeing with you in regards to the fans as well. I meant that they get so hyped and emotionally invested, as if they were on the payroll with the actual players. It's only game. Why you have to be mad? Talking about to your significant other like you hate them. If you're not happy, make changes or break up. Most people choose their significant other. Why choose to be with someone you hate? And I don't want to hear any stay together for the kids junk. My parents splitting up was one of the best things that happened in my childhood. Thank you. I just left my wife of 22 years and my kids actually thank me. I told them I'd never talk bad about their mom, but I explained that if someone makes you unhappy more than they make you happy, regardless of how much you love them or how much history you have, it's time to let them go. Taking off your hat in a building. Thank you. I feel comfortable and confident in a hat, and I don't know why so many places and people have a problem with that. No one has ever given me a clear answer when I've asked how wearing something inside can be offensive. One time my principal said they do it in banks and museums, so faces are more identifiable. That school had no cameras. It used to be considered good etiquette for men to remove their hats when they went indoors. I don't know why, but it's gone the way of the dinosaurs. Texting while driving. I ride a motorcycle, so I get a better view into people's cars than you'd expect. The number of people glued to their phones is insane. I may change a song, use Siri with voice controls, or use GPS. That's the only interaction I have with my phone. While behind the wheel my car has car phone, so I use that to answer calls as well. My dad does this. I have to tell him regularly to stop, pay attention, or at least have one hand on the wheel, because I don't feel safe when he drives. If he doesn't get better soon, I will not step into his car anymore.